Morning, Robert. Hello, lovely to see you. Welcome to everyone listening and watching to Constellations Conversations with Robert Rowland Smith and myself, Nicola Dunn. Today we agreed, Robert, wouldn't we, that we would talk about looking for love, because this is a common preoccupation for people who might come to Constellations because they feel somehow blocked, that their intimate life is not flowing in a way that they would wish. And I'm sure you've had the same experiences of me with people, and we'll talk a little bit about what might be getting in the way of that possibility for individuals.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, if I were to think about the, I don't know, top 5 most frequently presenting issues in constellations, I think looking for love would come in that top 5, along with one which maybe is a bit more amorphous, like, realizing my potential, or, I'm feeling like I'm a bit underpowered, or words to that effect. That's a common one, as is, finding the right purpose in life, career-wise, which is connected. But yeah, looking for love comes up a lot. And I think we're specifically today focusing on romantic love, even though we might necessarily look more broadly across the system at other forms of love and how they are connected. But yeah, it's a pretty common thing. Often it's connected too with people arriving saying, I'm looking for love and I want a family too. So there's that take on it too. So I don't just want a partner, I want a partner with whom I can have start a family. So yeah, pretty common. I expect you have a fairly similar experience, right?
Yes, I do. And I think, as you say, if we wanted to divide groups, there are those that are wanting a kind of relationship that would have the bedrock upon which they feel they could build a family. And then there are other people who have come out of maybe a long relationship that has, sort of withered on the vine, and they would like for the next arc of their life to have a relationship that somehow would feel more meaningful.
Yes, no, exactly. And I mean, if I were to go straight into it, I would suggest, maybe you feel the same here, that often you have to take a step backwards before you can go 2 steps forwards with this looking for love malarkey. In other words, it's less about who do I want to be with, but who do I need to disentangle from in order to be free and available in the first place. And it's those hidden tethers, I think, that we probably often start off with, right?
Yeah. Who am I unconsciously committed to, taken by, in a sense? And we look at that obviously transgenerationally. Where is that lack of freedom in love actually part of the family history?
Yeah, exactly. I was working with a woman not too long ago, in a way that actually revealed to me what I think is a fairly common trope in that. So this is a woman, and not to belittle it by saying it's common, but I've seen it a few times now, maybe you have, but this is a woman in her late 30s, single, not previously married, with no children, noticing her friends settling down, having children, and so on, feeling left behind, feeling anxious about being left behind, feeling that her biological clock is ticking louder and louder. That's one side of it. The other side of it, in this case, interestingly, having lost her mother a few years ago, a sense that her father is on his own and she must be the one to look after him. And in the constellations that we've done, that connection to the father, that prior bond, if you like, to the father, is the one that's limiting her systemic scope, as it were, for inviting in a new, in her case, it would be a male partner.
Yes. So I think one does need to go back, and I'd say it's probably quite a few steps in order to go forward. And as you say, one of the first things that might appear in a constellation would be the intimate relationship with the parents. Was there a good flow there, or was there a vacancy? And if there is a vacancy, children so want their parents to be happy and so want to keep the structure of the family stabilized in some kind of way, that they will sacrifice themselves in that role, all unconsciously, which is the more difficult part of it. So often you might meet sort of, I don't know if you do this, but I often meet women who are saying, would actually openly say, you know, I'm just looking for a man who would love me as much as my father did. And so, you know, they're aware that their primary love is their father. And so, of course, there isn't that much room for another man to come along.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I think there is a sub-genre or sub-theme in this. Now you mention it, I've seen it recently 2 or 3 times, if not more, where I mean, we're talking about women to start with here. We'll obviously talk about men too, but where the woman has, you know, in full knowledge, married a man that they know or they believe to be inferior to their father in some way, you know, and that you know, he will never be as good as my dad, you know, and they're fine with that. You know, it's a choice, because they're preserving the well, I suppose in psychoanalytic language you'd call it kind of narcissistic infant relationship with the father in some way, while having the husband playing a sort of minor role in their systemic life. You know, so although you talk about the unconscious, I'm actually thinking of 3 examples where I've seen that, and it's been quite explicit.
Right. And as you're speaking, my heart is going out for these men who have been recruited on the basis of, you know, some sort of kind of acceptance that they're inferior in this setting, whereas in another setting they may not be considered inferior.
Exactly.
So, and the same with sons and mothers. I can speak to that, you know, the mother is the first love. And, you know, somewhere, you know, men will tell me sometimes when their mothers pass that there's that sense of the person who they knew they could always go back to is now no longer available. And we do, obviously, in Constellations, we look further down the maternal and paternal line to look at these situations. But we also consider, I'm sure you've seen it many times, loves that weren't able to come into fruition. So in the sense that previously in families, families were very keen on people marrying the same. So religion, class, political view, race. And so any divergence from that or hint of a divergence was normally quite, you know, forcefully shut down. So there is, you know, a love strand left incomplete, which is sometimes picked up by, you know, someone who comes from a later generation.
I'm thinking of in a constellation, when this question of looking for love arises, there will often be the issue holder, and we have a representative for them. I'll run with a female issue holder just to begin with, and we'll come back to the male. We will have aspects of their family system set up, so a father and mother, maybe others. And then we will have a representative for the potential future boyfriend, partner, mate, lover. And what I've noticed, and I'd be really interested to see if you notice this too, is that the representative for the potential new boyfriend, let's call him, has some patience, but it's finite with what is unfolding before his eyes. Like, he arrives kind of in principle ready to be, you know, partnered up with the issue holder's representative, the woman in this case. But the longer the family saga plays out and these entanglements become visible and their knottiness becomes apparent, the more he becomes disengaged and, quite frankly, bored by what he's seeing, as if he's saying to the, you know, for him, the potential girlfriend, look, I won't wait forever. You sort your stuff out or I'm moving on, is the kind of kind of message.
I love your description. It reminds me, like you say naughty and I was going to say bristly. It reminds me of those rides in Disneyland where they say, come, try our super new ride. And you might sort of enter, and you walk in, you open the door and you realize that they've obscured that there is this long snaking queue that is going to take many, many hours for you and your children. And I think, the young man is waiting, he's, sort of revved up, and he thinks it's quite a direct path to his partner. And suddenly he realizes it's going to be this long, ambling wait for her to be, fully open and complete. And, the same with men choosing a woman, and also with same-sex partners. It's all the same issues are really present.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. And that's why I think it's, it is about the pre-work. What's the prior commitment or entanglement that's preventing that openness. And I mean, as a kind of bit of technology in the constellation, obviously we will then work with the entanglement that pre-exists and that exists as a block. Sometimes I will also find that even where there is a entanglement that could be more or less disentangled, some resistance actually remains on the part of the issue holder, who apparently wishes to have a relationship. And that can take the form of, I'm scared, I don't deserve it, I don't know how, I've never done it before. And also the intensity of the erotic aspect of the relationship that then is presented to them, because once the entanglements are taken away and the potential partner is standing in front of them, the potential partner wants love, but also something more than love as well. They want, erotic connection too. And these things can be quite intense for the person, looking for love. Sometimes what I do, I put in some representative for an abstraction here, a resource essentially, which is my capacity to receive. And I will stand that behind the representative, the issue holder, because it seems to me sometimes there's a bit of a residual resistance even after some of the disentangling has been done. What is it to receive? It's one thing to ask, it's another thing to receive. Because when you receive, just to be a bit philosophical about this, when you receive love, it's mixed up with an actual person. It's no longer just your idea of who that should be or your fantasy. There's a reality, and there's a difference, and there's an otherness about the other person.
Yes.
And that's quite, I wanted love, and I had an idea about that. Now I'm looking at the reality, it's a bit specific.
Yes.
And a bit
Well,
different.
I think it's wonderful because it's the difference between longing,
yes,
and receiving.
yes.
And it parallels a little bit for me the idea of being sexually desired from afar and actually having a sexual engagement with someone. The two things are quite different.
Exactly.
Yeah? There is a pathway in both of those, and you need to let go of something to receive something.
Yeah.
Or letting go of the distance. Maybe the distance is comfortable to you, keeping people, away from yourself. I think also, I don't know if, we over time have had different opportunities to represent in different scenarios. I remember the first time I was representing a couple that really desired each other and wanted to be together, and how wonderful it was. It was like just to stand unfettered, without many entanglements in this representation, to stand as a woman next to a man, very happy for him and his role, feeling the difference in our energies. I mean, it was a very beautiful experience. And I don't know if you have had something similar.
I have had something similar, but it had a tragic side to it. I was brought in as the representative for a man who had been married to a woman whom he absolutely loved. But the woman ended up in a mental institution. And I was representing him, and there was a woman representing the wife, ex-wife. The bliss, I mean, the amount of oxytocin or dopamine or serotonin or whichever one it is, I can never quite remember. But whatever, you know, I was flooded with these chemicals, absolutely suffused with them. It was a moment of, yes, I'll call it bliss. It was ecstatic. Seeing this woman, seeing her face. I mean, I was completely in love with her in that constellation. I was. But it was tragic because I saw that she just, although kind of met me at that level of kind of mutual, yeah, it was a mutual love. She was pulled away elsewhere. She couldn't be there, or she could only be there for a while before returning. That systemic pull away from the relationship was too strong for her to resist. So I had to re-watch her, because this man had been married to this woman who ended up in a mental institution. So I had to re-watch her kind of recede from me, because in a way, I think what the issue holder wanted from that relationship was to find a way of restoring something, reliving it perhaps, which happened. But that pull was just greater than anything in that room. It was like the moon was pulling on her and just withdrawing her to another dimension.
Yeah. And I just share a small, I don't often share cases on this, but just to share a case when I was representing that has something a little bit similar, but it was a mother who brought a difficult relationship with a sort of pre-pubescent daughter, but it was going through a very difficult scenario. And in the fullness of the constellation, I represented the issue holder's mother. So in that sense, I'm the grandmother of the granddaughter. And it had seemed that this grandmother, who was from a Latin country, had fallen in love with someone who was from a Northern European country, and she'd gone to live with him in that country, and was in love with him, but found the climate of the community around her very inhospitable. So she left. But when I came into this constellation and the lover was presented, I was totally gone. There was almost nothing of me available for anyone else, including, obviously, in that case, my daughter, who had a different father. So I think this is just to underscore the power of relationships that don't have a fully integrated ending.
Yeah, I sometimes ask representatives questions along the lines of, you know, when you married X, how much of you married him or her?
It's a good question. It's a great one.
Yeah, and it's very fruitful in a constellation, because it gets you straight into what the kind of prior loyalties are or were. It reminds me a bit, I've been thinking quite a lot recently about Shakespeare, but it reminds me of King Lear. King Lear is dividing up his kingdom. He's got 3 daughters, and he's thinking of an equal distribution, but he has a favorite who's his youngest, Cordelia, and he invites the oldest 2 to kind of flatter him in order to get their share. When it comes to Cordelia's turn, the youngest, his favorite, she refuses to flatter him and says, well, if I give you all my love, how much am I going to have left over for my husband? Okay, great question. And I think we resolve that in constellations, not through a pie chart, you know, like a third to dad, a third to mum, a third to my husband or wife. I think because that is the instinct, as though love is a kind of finite commodity that can be parceled up, you know, and there's only a certain percentage that anybody can have. I think we resolve it in a different way, genealogically, essentially, like, you know, like you were saying to the mother, you know, you were my first love. The man might say to his mother, you were my first love, and now I'm marrying this woman, or worse to that effect. So we put it in time rather than in space, actually, in that sense, and that's what seems to begin to unlock it a bit.
So I would say that in my experience when you're talking, I agree with you. The clinical pie chart, not helpful.
No.
The heart's an ever-expanding organ. And so for me, love is layered. And if you want to be urban about it, it's the love sandwich, isn't it? You know, have you got a triple decker, or is it just a, you know, a plain ploughman's lunch? You know, 2 bits of bread and a slice of cheese. So it's layered love allows the space for past love, past, you know, erotic, sensual love, but also it allows for layered contemporary love. So you may be in a relationship, but there may be other people in your life of all different genders who you feel love for. And it's on the love continuum, but it's not within the erotic space.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it was a bit of a throwaway comment you made there, you know, that the heart is never expanding organ. I think it's worth emphasizing that, actually. And I think, if anything, Constellations does it kind of widens the channel for love, you know, as much as we can tolerate, actually, because it can always go a bit further. So the question is our tolerance rather than the amount available. It's whether we can take it on.
And just as another throwaway, I think that's really interesting, because it's normally fear that limits love, isn't it? So it's our fear that limits our capacity to love.
Yeah, exactly. What you said also made me think of not just entanglements with mother and father that are preventing the finding of love, but also with ex-partners.
Yes.
You know, people of our generation, Nicola, differ from those probably of our parents' generation, where our parents' generation generally had fewer relationships. You know, people of our generation and later, they have more relationships, hence, you know, they produce more exes along the way. More exes are kind of thrown off as they go through life. And I think there's a very nice formula to deal with that in Constellations. I mean, it's not universal, but it seems to me a lot of people have a slightly binary view about their exes, like either we do talk to them or we don't talk to them. And the phrase I like to use, and I picked it up in my own training, maybe you did too, is for somebody's representative to say to an ex-partner, "You'll always have a place in my heart." It's not to say I'm still in love with you. It's not to say I'm still attached to you, but you know, that happened. It was significant. I acknowledge it. I'm not evicting you from my heart, and I'm not redacting you from my story either.
Yes. And, you know, I would sort of add to that, you'll always have a place in my heart. And now I let you go completely, and I have no claim upon you.
I like that. I have no claim on you. I think that's super.
That's the kicker, I have to
Yeah,
add, because
that is.
you can't, well, you can. It's not helpful to your current relationship to keep an ex as a, you know, possible backup, a plan B or C if things come along. And it's just interesting. I was thinking that, you know, we talk about exes and we use a cross for a kiss. So it has a little bit of synergy there. But it is about letting someone go also energetically, completely, so they can be with someone else as well. Which often, you know, irritates people. They might finish with their ex. You know, we use the term dump, which is rather inelegant, but and then get rather cross if they were to start a relationship with anybody else. So it's complex.
Yeah, no, exactly. As if the rights extend beyond the ending.
Or the rights extend to the grave.
Or the rights extend to the grave. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? Because we do live in a slightly more complex relationship world, I think, now than ever before, probably, in terms of sort of managing those multiples, if you like.
And for young people, I would say common generation, you know, young generations now, you know, they probably would have more relationships than our generation have had. And they would be layered. Some will be hookups, some will be meaningful. And so I think there's more to manage and negotiate. And, you know, I feel compassion for them with that.
Yeah, I mean, it leads me to think about not many, but few constellations I've done with kind of polyamorous relationships, or where there's an open relationship and so on. And what strikes me about those, as a kind of rule, I suppose, is that it's never equal. You know, it's in a relationship between 3 people, you know, it's not, you know, a third, a third, a third. You know, I remember constellating for a woman who kept a so-called stable of men. And again, you know, they are not equal relationships. And of course, there is, you know, for each person involved, they bring their own systemic gear with them, you know. So the idea of it being easy to manage, I mean, this is an obvious point perhaps from a everyday point of view, but it's not, you know, the idea that one can have control, systemic control over a group of people, I think is a fallacy. And one of the phrases I get people to say, or sentences I get people to say when they're in those complex multiple love relationships, is a phrase such as, "I'm in it, not above it."
Oh, it's nice. I like it.
Yeah, because sometimes there is, well, maybe it's not a universal, but sometimes there is that sense of, I'm running this show, you know, I'm the director, and I've got these various characters on the stage that I can bring in or send off at will.
So it is about, you know, really is the power shared.
Mm.
And as you say, on the one hand, we use the term polyamorous, but actually they are sort of numbered into different levels of interest and commitment, and it's not equal. And some people will be very good at handling that, and it works for them, and that's good. And others, I think they might, you know, they have to have their eyes widened a little bit to really understand the fullness of the system.
There's another take on it I was thinking of as well, which is looking for love. So for those people who arrive wanting a family, men or women, we can put in a representative for the potential, you know, fruit of this union, i.e. the baby, who may or may not arrive. And I think this extends, by the way, to adopted children, although we should probably have a separate conversation about that. And again, just going from my observation, the client arrives, I want to have a family. Okay, great. What often arises is that then the partner becomes a means to that end. The potential partner becomes a means to that. You know, what I want actually is the love with the baby. And yes, I need a partner in order to affect that, you know, male or female. But what I'm after is actually the love of the baby. And of course, you know, again, it goes back to this idea, you sort of got to take a step back before you take those steps forward, because then again, obviously, the representative for the partner goes, well, you know, what about me? Basically. And not only that, but quite touchingly, the representative for the future baby then says also, you know, what about them? You know, as if well, you alluded to this earlier, you know, children are so keen for balance in the system, for everybody to be acknowledged, you know, good or bad, that they will often be the ones who will say, but, you know, hold on a minute, you're missing something over here. You know, we talked about blind spots recently. They are often the ones who hold the mirror up to the blind spot, actually, or hold the space of the blind spot.
Yes. And I've also worked, I'm sure you have, with couples or single people thinking about IVF, and worked with donors. And once again, it is about, the focus is often on the baby and not on opening the heart to the other person who's donating, you know, crucial genetic material.
Yes.
You know, they can be if they've been done well, they can be very beautiful pieces of work that, you know, and humbling pieces of work, because it is a union of more than two to create a child.
Yes, exactly. Beautifully put. Nicola, I'm conscious of time, so we should begin to sort of begin to our descent, as it were. But I think, I mean, one of the key things I'm hearing in this is that love isn't an object to be scooped up or extracted from somewhere. Like, as soon as we are, you know, want love, since we look for love, we're implicated in that. And when we have a whole set of relationships just to respect, as it were, and that we ourselves are in the force of other presences that we're not completely in control of.
Yes, beautifully put. I think it's not a commodity, and one gives up sort of total independence for connection. And I think the word I would use is that love descends. It's not a given, but it's an act of grace.
Well, that is an absolutely beautiful way of ending this, Nicola. Love descends. Thank you for that. And thank you to everybody who's been watching this video. This is one of a series called Constellations Conversations, which you can look at obviously on YouTube. It would be great if you could like the video, and even better if you could subscribe, because then you'll see them immediately when they come up. We post about once a week, approximately. And if you'd like to follow up with regard to therapy or constellations, you can get in touch with Nicola via her website, nicoladunnconstellations.com. Mine is my name, robertrowlandsmith.com. And yes, we look forward to seeing you soon. I should also say, Nicola runs regular workshops for people mainly in London, if you'd like to go along as an issue holder or a representative. She also runs a training, which I sometimes contribute to a bit. And she also does online constellations as well, worth knowing. And this is a shameless plug, I've also now developed a deck of cards, digital cards based on constellations that you can use to reflect on your relationships a bit too. So you can find out about them on my website too. So thank you very much indeed, and we'll see you again. Thank you.